Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina and you might recognize me from my own sewing channel, Lifting Pins and Needles. I am here doing a little visit on the Love Notions channel to bring you a lot of information that you would want to know about the new pattern releases. Now this is a double release. There is a version for women, there is a version for men. They are both called Band Camp shirt, which I think is a really cool name. Because the Band Camp shirt is a brand new pattern here at Love Notions, it'll be $3 off. Equals to around 25% off for 1 week. The sale ends next Monday, the 16th of September. In the description box of this video and at the top of the comment section pinned, you will find my affiliate link. You can use it if you want to. Clicking on that link will take you directly to the Love Notions website and the page for the shirt that you want, either the women's version or the men's. And if you do purchase from there, I will receive a small commission. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but it does support the work that I do here on YouTube. One of the main features in this shirt is the camp collar. That's why it's in the name of the pattern. And the features of these are quite similar between both the men's and the women's version. Of course, there's differences between them, only a few, but the general style is pretty much the same. You can see that both have a camp collar. This camp collar has a really easy integrated facing in the center. This is a camp collar I'm wearing right now. In this area here, there's just a fold. It makes the sewing construction easier, and that is the area that's interfaced. You get this lovely V shape with a little lapel and your collar right there. That is the camp collar. It's finished inside with a traditional method where at the back you have a little snip that allows the collar to fold in. All the sewing steps for the camp collar will be included in this episode, so no worries, you'll see it all in detail. So that is the same for the men's and the women's version. Now, even though both the men's and the women's version have the camp collar, they look a little bit different, and it's because they fit a little bit different. Our neckline is lower and more open. For the men's, it's up higher and smaller, so it'll have a slightly different shape there, but the technique will be the same. Just so you're aware, if you end up comparing both pattern pieces, they are totally different, and it's because we just wear necklines lower, men wear them higher. That's the difference. But the technique would be exactly the same. Both of them have set-in sleeves. These sleeves can be short. The short sleeves have a little cuff that you fold up. There's an optional tab that you can sew in there with a little button. There's also long sleeves. These long sleeves have a tower placket at the bottom and a cuff. Same technique that you would have sewn in the Aria shirt. If you have sewn the Aria shirt, keeping it consistent, it'll be the same technique. If you want a refresher on the tower placket, in my own channel at Lifting Pins and Needles, I do have a video showing you the tower placket in full-on detail if you want to look at that. For the long sleeves, you can also add a tab on the inside if you wanted to roll up the cuffs and wear it 3/4 length. That is an option as well. I think that's really cool if you want versatility for your styling. They all have a split hem, little slit on the side there. And at the back, you can sew two versions. One that has a yoke. That yoke is double. You would enclose the shoulder seams and the back horizontal seam with a burrito method. That's really well explained. Below the yoke, you have a back piece with a box pleat. Or if you don't want to do the yoke and the pleat and all of that, there's also a plain back version where it's just a back piece, no yoke, no pleat, nothing. And I think that could simplify it if you're newer to sewing shirts. It'll still look really good. Both versions have patch pockets. You can sew simple patch pockets, which is just a rectangle, or you can sew cargo pockets, which would have a pleat in the center. You can add a little flap to that one as well if you want to. I think the cargo pocket and the flap would shine a lot more if you use a solid fabric. If you use a print, you won't really see them that much. And here is where the differences come between the men and the women's version. For the men's version, you have a color blocked option, which has a seam coming from the shoulders all the way down the front. So you can use two different types of fabrics there. I've heard about this being similar to a bowling shirt. Now, I am from South America. I know nothing about bowling, but that is what I'm passing on to you. You can do fun color blocking there. Now, this option is not available in the women's version. The women's version has many more options, which is have a sleeveless version that the men's don't have. There's also a full bust option. The full bust option will have a bust dart, quite a lot of pieces to draft and have for you as options for fitting, instead of having the color blocked version that the men's version does. But if you're experimental in your sewing and you want to add your own color blocking, you're welcome to do it. Just add a seam in the center, cut it, add seam allowance, and you will be sweet if you want to recreate that look as well. But it's not an official part of the pattern. Now, if you know Love Notions patterns well, you might be thinking, what is the difference between this new pattern and one that's already in the catalog, which is the Melody Dolman? This is the Melody Dolman that I'm wearing right now. I thought I'd just point a few differences so you don't think it's the same pattern, because it's definitely not the same pattern. The only similarity really with the Melody Dolman and the band camp shirt is the camp collar. So this is the camp collar here, is a feature that is shared between the versions. But as the Melody Dolman says, there is a dolman sleeve over here. There is a cuff that you can sew onto the dolman sleeve. And then the fit is very different. The Melody Dolman is more fitted at the bust and it has more waist shaping, and then it's got a lot more ease at the hips. It's also longer because it allows you to tie it up at the front as an option, something that you won't be able to do with a band camp shirt. So this one's got a little bit more ease. There's no waist shaping compared to the Melody Dolman, and it's a little shorter. And then there's a whole difference of having all these different setting sleeves and just a different fit, the yoke. The Melody Dolman does not have a yoke. So there's quite a few differences here for you not to get confused and think, I won't need this pattern or I won't need the other pattern. If you like both styles, they both have a lot of different features for you to enjoy and have more fun with sewing. So I thought I'd point that out and include that in the video so it's helpful for you to know the differences. I think the liner, if you look at it in detail, you really see the differences. About the fabrics, I'd say the types of fabrics would be equivalent between the men's and the women's versions. There's no difference right here. And you can go either flowy or you can go structured. If you're newer to shirt making or sewing in general, you have an easier experience if you choose the more structured fabrics. Quite traditional fabrics here. You could even use quilting cotton if it's soft enough, cotton lawn, chambray, shirting, poplin, seersucker, maybe a medium weight denim, different types of shirting, 100% linen, linen rayon blend, linen cotton blend. All of those are going to be structured and easy for you to work with. Flowy fabrics include 100% rayon, the light plain weave. I'm going to say my son is a big fan of this type of fabric. He really loves the feel and the softness and the flowiness and the lightness and the freshness, all those things. A little heavier would be rayon twill. Then you have tencel twill, you have tencel, rayon linen blend. I think the silk and the crepe would be more suited to the women's version because they're the types of fabrics that we like the best. Other notions that you need are fusible interfacing. You need an amount to interface the upper collar and then this integrated facing area. It's quite a large area, it's longish. You might end up needing a lot if you end up making lots of shirts like I have. Also little pieces like the cuffs, you'll find interfacing in other areas as well. And then buttons, depends on if you're putting buttons on the flaps, on the pockets, and how long your shirt is. If you've made any length adjustments, you're going to need quite a few buttons. The sizing for the women's version comes in sizes extra small to 5X. This has a standard bust option and a full bust option. Goes up to a 59.5-inch hip. The full bust option is going to be good for you if you take your measurements and the measurement of your high bust and your full bust has a difference of 4 inches or more. That will give you a better fit and it will also give you a bust dot on the side. I think that's awesome that you have that option. When you look at ease, it will also give you 2 extra inches of ease at the bust, the waist and the hips. So it will be roomier in general. For ease at the bust, you have about 6.5 inches straight at the waist, so there's a lot of space there. Less space at the hips, around 2 to 4 inches of ease. To choose your size for the women's version, you always want to look at your high bust measurement. That will give you the base size so that your neckline, your shoulders fit really well. Have a look at that first, and then depending on if you have 4 or less inches of difference between these two circumferences, then you would choose the regular or the full bust option. And then you can blend from there. If you have a larger hip size, go ahead and blend on the sides up to a little above where the side slits start so that they don't get involved. Because it's such a straight design, you can choose an area to add or remove length if you need to. I think those adjustments for length would be really easy to do. For the two versions you'll see on me in a little bit, I've sewn size large with the full bust option. I could in theory choose between the regular and the full bust option because I'm sort of there in the middle. But I do like the look of the bust dot. That's why for woven patterns at Love Notions that do have a bust dot, I end up sewing the bust dot because I just like the fit of the bust dot. I'm a fan. For the men's version of the band camp shirt, you also have sizes from extra small to 5X. This goes up to a chest and hip of 58 inches. If you look at men's sizing, it's a lot different than women's. Men's sizing is basically a rectangle. When you look at the size chart for chest and hips, you'll see the same measurement, which means it's a rectangle. So for fitting a man, I would say take measurements, choose the size that will fit his largest circumference, whether that be at the hips, at the chest, or the belly, or any area, and that would be your base size so that everything fits. For ease here, you have 5 inches of ease at the chest, 5 inches of ease at the hips, around 9 inches of ease at the waist. And depending on the size, the total length, if you measure from the base of the neck down to the hem at the back, will be from 29.5 to 31.5 inches. For the versions you'll see on my son in a little bit, there's 2 versions to see. I've sewn a size large as my base. That was the largest circumference at his hips. And then I sewed a large up to here, including the sleeves. But I blended into an M at the shoulders
and the neckline because I know that was going to fit him better.
Blending into a smaller size at the shoulders was really easy, just between the lines, smooth lines, and you can do that for sure. That was the only customized fitting I did for my son. I didn't change the length, anything like that, and he's 6 foot tall. Now that we know all about the band camp shirt, we can see how to sew this camp collar, which is really cool. Just take your time. I've thrown a little extra steps in there just to facilitate it for you, and we're going to see it in nice detail. Let's dive in to see how to sew this camp collar. Here are some of the most important pattern pieces that you're going to need to complete the camp collar. So we have our front. This front has an integrated facing. This black area that you see here along this edge is going to be folded, and that's what's going to give you a facing that includes the neckline already and partially the shoulder over here. On this edge, you're going to find marks on the pattern piece that you need to transfer to your fabric. Those are really important because it's going to help our camp collar end up symmetrical. That little mark there is where the collar is going to stop right here, and then you're just going to have fabric for the rest. Here we have 2 collar pieces. This is the upper collar that is interfaced right here, and on the bottom we have the under collar that is not interfaced. They're both cut from the same piece. We're also going to need our yoke pieces, and we're going to do some basic sewing construction before we get to this stage. Before doing anything, before even touching and moving the fabric around, we need to stay stitch. I'm going to be stay stitching from the shoulder into the center, from the shoulder into the center for both sides so that they end up symmetrical. Same as for both layers of the yoke pieces right here, from the shoulder into the center, from the shoulder into the center. Later when we sew the collar, we're going to use a 3/8 seam allowance. So this stay stitching around the neckline needs to be a little bit smaller than that. That's one back yoke neckline done. Now I'm going to repeat the same with the other back neckline. Now the front neckline is similar, it's just that half is interfaced and half isn't. This is a step that you really can't skip unless you want this to stretch out as you sew and then have the collar be too short for your neckline. So it's a really important step. There's so much to do, burrito methods, maybe some try-ons. So you need to protect the curve of the neckline here with the stay stitching. I had already matched my upper collar and my under collar together. They're right sides together. You can see the pretty fabric in there. In this case, I have the upper collar interfaced. This is the one here on the top. They are both cut from the same pattern piece, so they're the same. And the one on the bottom is the one that's not interfaced, and that will be the under collar. Interfacing the upper collar might give you a nicer experience with your sewing. And that's because with the camp collar, along the bottom edge, you're going to find notches that are going to match the shoulder seams. We need to do a snip into here later and then fold this edge in the center in. This snipped area is much more stable if it's interfaced rather than you trying to do it on an upper collar that would not be interfaced, like this one over here would be harder to manipulate. What we're going to do next is sew these short seams right here, and then this upper edge that's straight. You can see this bottom edge is nice and curved. It's where you're going to have the reference marks to snip and a line at the center back. This is not the area you want to sew. It's this and this on the top. So we're going to get that sewn with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, which is what this pattern uses. As you know, there are many ways to sew. Some people like to pivot at the corners and then keep going. I prefer to finish the seam and then start over on the other corner just to have an intersection of seams. Here is the collar sewn. Now, before sewing, I want to do something extra. At the bottom of the curved edge, you're going to have these marks here that are going to match the shoulder seams. I want to do a bit of stay stitching from here to there. Now, we're going to fold this in later by 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going to do the stay stitching at 3/8 of an inch. It's also going to be like a guide stitch. It's going to help me press this area up afterwards. But I'm not going to be snipping into the upper collar at this point. This is usually when you would do that. Let's just leave the snip for later so that we can confirm that we are well placed at the shoulder seams before we commit to snipping the fabric. In the end, you're going to end up with the same technique. It's all the same. It's just that we're delaying the little snip until later, and we're going to add a little stay stitch from this mark to that mark at 3/8 of an inch. That's going to stabilize the fabric there, help us press it, and know also how much to snip into without eyeballing it later. I've changed my color thread to a lighter color so you can really see what's going on, and it's going to be easy for me to remove later also. So I went a little past the mark there, but you can clearly see what I've done. Before we go to the iron to tidy this up and flip it right sides out, we can trim the seam allowances smaller. If you are working with heavier, bulkier fabrics, you might want to trim down the seam allowance here, and you could do it in 2 steps. The under collar, you would leave it smaller than the upper collar, so you could trim down the upper collar to 1/4 of an inch and then the under collar to 1/8. In this case, my fabric is not heavy at all. I'm not really worried about bulk, and even I would be happy to leave the 3/8 seam allowance in there and just apply the different techniques to the different types of fabric. So if this was a cotton twill or some really heavy quilting cotton or a denim or something, I would probably trim in different sections, but because this is just a lightweight fabric, I'm gonna just trim down to 1/4 of an inch for both layers. Because I have these intersections here of seams, I can fold them onto themselves towards the under collar right there, and then just put my finger inside, hold all the seam allowances and flip, and you get a really nice point there. So give this a go. You might like it. Otherwise, you can just sew your seams while pivoting and then trimming away. They're all valid methods. They're just a little bit different. So I'm going to head to the iron, press the seam open over here, neaten this up, and then from here to there where I have the stay stitching, I'm also going to press in by 3/8 of an inch, and I'm going to have that memory crease there ready for later when it's time to actually go ahead and do the little snip right there. There is one step we need to complete before sewing the collar. It's just going to help us down the line. Over here in this extension for this facing, I have serged that small shoulder seam, and also this all the way down to the bottom, so that's done. Now this little edge, we need to press it in by 1/2 an inch as per the instructions, and this memory crease is going to be helpful for later. So it's there, it's already pressed, and then we can forget about it. We do that on both sides. After doing this little step, we can go ahead and start pinning the collar to the neckline. To continue with the collar, we need to get up to this stage. So you would have following your instructions how to do the burrito method if you're sewing the version that has the yoke and then the back piece. There is a simpler version that just has a plain back. In that case, you would have needed to just sew the shoulder seams. What the burrito method does with this double yoke is that it encloses the shoulder seam right there and horizontal seam at the bottom of the yoke. So that is something that we've already done. And now at this stage, we can bring our collar back and start putting all of this together. Here we have the collar. I have been to the iron and neatened it up. Remember, I had done a guide stitch here / stay stitch to fold that middle section in by 3/8 of an inch, but I still haven't snipped. What we need to do, take the layer that has the non-interface side, the under collar, and this is what is going to go right sides together with the neckline right there. I'm going to go to the sewing machine, pin the center backs here of the collar to the neckline, and keep pinning, pinning, pinning. Here we have our neckline. The shirt is right sides up like this. I have a pin marking the center back. Here are our shoulder seams, and now this is the collar. The non-interfaced layer is the one that we're going to be pinning on right now. So we're going to match this up and pin it. Then we're going to keep going, and we're going to have this little mark here on the under collar, which will correspond to the mark that we have on the upper collar at the same level. This one should match the shoulder seam right here. So from the shoulder seam to the center back, we can confirm that we have the same length. So that's good. All that stay stitching that we've done really helps to achieve that, because if we hadn't done that with all the manipulation of doing the burrito method and everything, you know, this could have stretched out. Your collar could end up smaller than your neckline. And then on this other side, it's the same. Find the little mark right here, match it up to the shoulder seam, and then pin it. Now that we've confirmed that from the shoulder seam to the other shoulder seam, the collar is matching up nicely, I'm going to confirm the upper collar is good too by matching that notch to that notch over here. And it's all the same, it's good, it's going to fit. So now at this point, I'm super happy to do the snip. You can see that up to this point, you really didn't need the snip to be there. Now you do. But sometimes fabric moves, you know, you're working with different types of fabric. 1/8 of an inch of a difference, if you snipped that way or that way more, you know, could make a difference in the end. So I'd rather confirm that it's all good and now do the snip. You can see the stay stitching is going to help me snip the right amount. This part in the center is going to stay folded in. At the shoulders, we're going to have that straight edge from the snip together. And we're going to keep pinning this like that. Now we have this edge of the collar, and at the back we have a little mark. Mine's in yellow right there. That is where the edge of the collar should reach. And this mark is at the same place on the other side. That's going to help your collars be symmetrical. So it's important that you're very accurate in pinning it exactly right there. And then we can keep pinning the rest right here. There's a lot of pinning to get it in place, but when we finally sew this, it'll just be one seam. Okay, after pinning the collar into place, matching the mark that you have over here, now it's time to use this extension of the facing. We had previously serged that little seam and all the way down here and done a memory crease at 1/2 inch. So that's ready. Now we just have to bring this extension over, and we're going to be sandwiching the collar between the facing, the extension, and the neckline. Your mark to fold is where the edge of the interfacing is, so that is the middle. And you can see the yellow mark is going to match exactly where this one is right there. I'm going to take that same pin and pin all these layers in place, and now we keep pinning going up like this. And this fold is going to reach the shoulder seam right here. Remember over here we have this folded edge on the inside. This fold should reach that raw edge that we have right there where we have the 2 layers of the collar, and I'm going to pin them all together right there. In between, I'm going to use the same pins I had from before to pin all the layers together right here. So that's one side, and then we have the other side. Remember, we have the folded edge of the collar. We have this raw edge right here that's going to match the shoulder seam where that little yellow mark is. And then over here, the edge of the collar is going to match the yellow mark on the back. And then we're going to bring our extension, our facing right over, making sure it's all symmetrical over here. And then we have our fold that's going to match this edge of the collar. In this area, we have 4 edges that are raw that should match up together on the edge. So make sure you fiddle with your fabric to get it all aligned properly right there. So basically, we're going to start from here, go all the way to the other side. Remember that in the middle area, we have this upper collar that we don't want to sew. We don't want to be catching that, so we are going to be pushing it out of the way. And over here, we're going to be sewing flush against that fold, right against that fold right there, but without catching it. This area, you need to slow down and pay attention, and same as this other side over here. Before sewing, there's one check I like to do, and it's to bring them both together at the center to make sure that everything's symmetrical. So when I fold it like this, I have the collars in the exact same place. I can see them. So that means that the distance here is going to be the same on both sides. Remember here our upper collar is folded to the inside. You can see that white stitching line there. Make sure that stays folded. And here we're going to sew flush against that without catching the fold. I even like to hand crank a little bit. So let's pull this upper collar out of the way. Now we're only sewing the under collar and the neckline. So upper collar is free over here in this middle section. And here we're reaching the section again where we're going to sew right against that fold without catching the upper collar. So there we have it. Our collar is sewn on in this area that's interfaced here. It's very curved. I'm going to do some snips. This is through many layers. I'm going close to the seam, but not through it, of course. And then in this center area where we still have this loose upper collar, we're still going to snip, but it's through less layers. It's also curved at the back. Okay, here where we have this edge of the facing folded, where the shoulder seam is, we need to do a nice snip because we need to be able to push all the seam allowance up so that we can cover it with this upper collar. At this stage, we couldn't do that. So I'm just going to take my scissors and do this snip now. And now all the seam allowance can be pushed up like this, and then this can all be covered with the upper collar. So it's tucking it all the way in there, and then it's going to look super neat like that. Quite a few layers to go through here. And now On this side, we can also push seam allowance up and we can cover it all up with this upper collar. At this point, we can flip this like that and we get our little point from the camp collar. Very nice. I'm going to press the seam allowance from this middle section up, and then we can come and cover that seam with our upper collar right there. Everything's neat. Now, before I do this final step, at this point, I can remove this white stay stitching that I'd done previously. Okay, so remember the shoulder seam, we have the seam allowance pressed up, and that is possible because we snipped into the shoulder seam. And then this upper collar can come and cover that area. Now over here, we still have this bulk, but we can tackle that bulk in and get that fold to cover it. So we're never gonna have raw areas visible here. And this, you can just slip stitch it onto the shoulder seam. That is the easiest way I find. And if you try to sew this with a machine, it would just look bulky on the other side. Now in this middle area, we still have the upper collar loose. This will cover the seam. And there's two options. I've done both many times. One is to slip stitch this by hand also. No one's ever going to see it. This is not an area of the garment that's visible from the outside. And with delicate fabrics, I have been known to slip stitch that whole area. It doesn't take that long. Or you can just edge stitch, which is what I'm going to do now. But first, I'm going to hand baste this in place so it doesn't move. And I can really control how much the upper collar is covering that little seam there. And then it's just one little seam there that's going to edge stitch and hold everything in place, and then our collar would be done. I've hand basted the upper collar, but before top stitching that down, I'm just quickly doing the slip stitching that is going to hold this little short facing area in place. There's nothing really magical about slip stitching. All I do basically is grab a fiber from the shoulder seam, grab a fiber from my facing, and just go over and over. I'm doing this about 1/4 inch apart, maybe a little less, and it's pretty invisible. I'm grabbing such a tiny amount of thread from each side, and you just go over and over and over, and you can be done in a few minutes. This will probably take like a minute to do. After slip stitching these little sections, it's finally time to finish this collar. And we're going to start from the shoulder seam all the way to the other shoulder seam, just sewing on the edge. And that is going to fix that upper collar in place and close it all up. And voila, we're done with the collar. This is the camp collar all sewn up. Very, very nice. You can see it's been top stitched from the shoulder seam to the other one. These little facing areas here were slip stitched right there, matching the shoulder seam. So that's really neat. Everything's enclosed, everything's super neat. This is one of my versions. This is a rayon linen blend. It's a fabric that has 87% rayon, 13% linen, and it's a really nice tropical print with a white background. I think this type of print would suit men and women. At least my son liked it, but I didn't have enough fabric to make 2 of them, so I made this one for myself. This one has the short sleeves with a cuff. I didn't sew the tab with the button here just because I don't think you would see it with the print. As always, tabs are always optional. It's a feature that you can add. This has the camp collar construction, which would be easier if you did the plain back version. This is just a plain back, no yoke. It would save you a lot of steps before actually getting to the camp collar, as you saw in the tutorial. It's very, very neat, and I did do the edge stitching here with the sewing machine. Seams are pressed open, and I think that's an easier option on the sides just to keep that little slit intact right there. This integrated facing is interfaced. On the inside, I have a basta because I'm doing the full bust option. It's really hard to see, it fits really well. You can barely see it because of all the print. And if you always get confused about what side to do the buttonholes on, there's one really easy way to remember. Women are always right because we are usually always right in everything, right? You know what I'm saying? So women's buttonholes go on the right wearer's side. Never forget that, because when you're sewing different versions for women and men, you might get confused and get them on the wrong side. So let's see this one on. Ta-da! Here is the first band camp shirt that I made. Really lovely. I love the length. It's the original length. I didn't make any changes. For reference, I'm 5'8". This is a size large with a full bust option. I do have darts right there. Little slits on the side. I've paired it with my denim white glissando skirt that I made last year, and I really love it. Really summery. I know I could dress this shirt up and down if I wanted, but it's mainly going to be a casual shirt. Here's a little closer look at the length. It's at the mid hip for me. If you like yours longer, of course you can lengthen or shorten, but I think this is a good length for the way that I like my clothes to fit right there. Little slit, very pretty, nice detail right there. The camp collar, very, very nice. This shoulder fit is very nice. It's very comfortable. There's great mobility here. I don't think there's an excessive amount of ease. For the sleeves, I think it fits really well. And here is my cuff folded up. At the back, there's no yoke. This is a plain back version, simple version, no detail on the back. I'm very happy. This is so wearable. It's so comfortable. It's so fresh. It's so nice. It fits amazing. The basta is very discreet because of all the print I have here. And even if it was a solid, just because the fit is so much better, if you do need it for your bust cup size, I think it's a great option to have. And don't be scared of that. They're not hard to sew, and I think they do make a difference. I'm very happy. This is my second version. This one has the sleeveless option. The men's version does not have a sleeveless option. I finished the inside with store-bought bias tape. This is satin bias tape. It's very nice, very soft. I'm really happy with the quality. You can also make your own. Same technique. This is the one you saw me sewing in the tutorial. It has the two yokes in there. Very neat, all enclosed. This one does have the pleat on the back, because if you're doing the yoke version, you're going to have a pleat at the back. And I prefer to sew my pleats to be an inverted box pleat. That's just my preference, but you can sew it the other way around. All the rest is the same. And I'm very, very, very happy with this tropical print in green. I'm sort of going green this time, and yeah, it's a beautiful shirt, fits amazingly. Let's see it on. This one also has a basta right there because it's the same full bust option, so I'm really happy about that. Let's see this one on. Ta-da, here is my second version. This is a sleeveless version. This one does have a yoke at the back and the pleat. Same size, large, with the full bust option with a dark tropical print here. There's a little bit of white in the print, so I've kept the same white denim skirt and the white shoes. You see it's a little looser. There's a little bit more ease because of the pleat. So nice. This is the original length of the blouse as well. No changes here. Love how it looks over the denim skirt. I think it's very casual, very fresh. Little pleat over here gives you a little bit more ease. Same collar. This was sewn in the traditional way with a little snip at the back. And at the back, we have the yoke and the inverted box pleat. You can sew the pleat the other way around if you want. Sleeveless armholes, I think, fit amazingly. There's a whole separate set of pattern pieces for the sleeveless version. So it's a little narrower over here. I think the coverage under the arm is amazing. And I think it's a really well-designed sleeveless armhole finished with binding on the inside. How much do I love this one? I mean, I love it so much. You'll see later that my son has a matching one in the same fabric. I'm really happy I had enough fabric to make both of us some of these. When I was browsing online to find this fabric, I liked it so much. I was planning to buy a lot of yardage, and I showed it to my son. He really liked the fabric because he likes tropical prints. So I made his shirt in this tropical print as well. We're never going to wear it together. You know, he's too old to be matchy-matchy with his mum. He's 17. But we can wear them in different occasions, and, you know, who cares? He loves it. I love it. As you can see, this camp collar here finishes up much higher. That's how men usually like wearing it. So it goes up quite high. You have a smaller lapel area over here, but the technique would be exactly the same. This one has the yoke, has the inverted box pleat that I did as well. With this one, I didn't add the cuff. Now that is going a little bit rogue from the pattern because the pattern has the cuff. I just did not have much fabric left to do the cuff, so I just did a regular hem right there, but that would not be an official part of the pattern. And then here are the side slits. I left the length, the original length. I measured it. I thought that was perfect. What I did to confirm that was compare it against one of my son's ready-to-wear shirts. If you do have some shirts around, it could give you a gauge of where you would like the length to be. I know some people like longer shirts or shorter shirts. It's all got to do with height as well. The original length of the shirt was perfect for my son, so I made no changes there. And it's amazing. He's a little more shy with the modeling, you know, but he was very willing, so let's see it on him. And then my son really wanted to have a black shirt. I purchased a really soft linen rayon shirting. It's amazing. It's 70% rayon, 30% linen. It's black. I know it's hard to see the things, but I think for men it could be really classic to have a black shirt like this. I did the inner yoke with an old shirt just to use up some nice shirting fabric that I have from shirts that I reuse for things. So this was one of his ex shirts, and it's all the same. I think actually you can see the details more here with this black one. Here's the camp collar. Now, remember I said the women's plackets go on the right because women are always right. So what's the opposite to that? Men's buttonholes go on the left wearer side. So you never forget. So that's where these are. For this one, I did the simple pocket right there. This one does have the cuffs folded up. These are nice structured fabric, so it holds up really, really well. And I don't have the little tab with a button right here. The yoke at the back, I did edge stitch right there. And here is the inverted box pleat. Super nice. It's all serged inside. It's all very neat. Love how these turned out, and he's gonna love it. He's gonna wear it for a long time. And let's see him all dressed up in black because that's what he likes. Hope you enjoyed this review and all the information about the Bandcamp shirt was helpful for you in your projects. Get one for yourself, get one for your loved ones, make them as gifts. I don't think these are especially hard to fit if you want to make it as a gift and you have a general idea of the person's size. And I really enjoyed sewing things that were just not for myself, for someone else was also super enjoyable for me. Don't forget that both patterns are on sale through next Monday, the 16th of September. I'm losing my voice a little bit from talking so much about the shirts. That's all from me. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It's all from me, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.